Why is it that discussions of white supremacy often lack specificity regarding the individuals implicated in such discourse? Over 50 million Americans identify with German ancestry, constituting the largest single-claimed ancestry group in the United States. This narrative appears to target the German ethnic group, likely stemming from the wartime master race propaganda promoting blonde hair and blue eyes during World War II. However, this notion remains unsubstantiated, lacking evidence in German legal records, documents, or speeches, yet persisting as a widely accepted truth. It appears that Americans of German descent are unjustly scapegoated for some of America's gravest injustices, including slavery, racism, and indigenous genocide. Contrary to this misconception, Germans in America should be celebrated as champions of freedom and equality, having fought and sacrificed for these ideals. Our education system's portrayal of Germans as colonizers overlooks historical facts, particularly Spain's extensive colonization efforts in North America over 2 centuries prior to German settlement. The Spanish and Portuguese colonial atrocities resulted in the decimation of approximately 90% of the indigenous population of the Americas, along with significant destruction of agriculture and infrastructure. The establishment of the Spanish colony of St. Augustine in 1565 marked the continent's first permanent European settlement and introduced enslaved Africans to the New World. This indicates that America's Hispanic, Latino, and Mexican communities have the closest ancestral ties to the white individuals accountable for these atrocities. However, there appears to be a deliberate attempt to distance themselves from this historical lineage. German settlement began in Germantown, Pennsylvania in 1683, where many immigrants facing financial hardship resorted to indentured servitude to fund their passage to America. Indentured servitude often entailed harsh conditions, with family members being forced into additional years of labor if a contracted individual died before completing their term. Furthermore, it is worth noting that just 3 years after their arrival, on April 18, 1688, Germans authored the first documented protest against slavery in the New World. While it is true that some Germans arrived with slaves, it is conveniently left out that these Germans almost entirely consisted of German Jews. Just compare the German settlement of Pennsylvania to the Jewish settlement South Carolina. Pennsylvania can be contributed with the following: the Society for the Relief of Free Negroes Unlawfully Held in Bondage, otherwise known as the First Abolitionist Society in the United States. The group would not immediately become active, being hindered by the chaos and confusion of the Revolutionary War, which almost immediately followed their formation. They were nonetheless the founders of the American abolitionist movement. In 1784, they were reorganized as the Pennsylvania Society for Promoting the Abolition of Slavery, for the Relief of Free Negroes Unlawfully Held in Bondage, and for improving the condition of the African race, or simply the Pennsylvania Abolition Society. Compare this to South Carolina's history. Specifically, Charleston. The Jewish community of Charleston has long been civically engaged and has viewed the health of its own families as intrinsically linked to the health of the city at large. Early Jewish immigrants to Charleston were attracted by its reputation of tolerance toward those of different faiths, as well as by its location. It was the nearest major port city to colonies of the West Indies. The first wave of immigrants were largely of Sephardic descent, but were followed in the mid-18th century by more German speakers and people of Ashkenazi heritage. One important population influx took place in 1741, when a large contingent of Jewish families left their homes in Savannah, Georgia, to resettle in Charleston because trustees of the Georgia colony would not let them, or anyone else, hold slaves. The state of South Carolina, which had long embraced slaveholding, was thus a welcoming place for these families. By 1749, when Georgia rethought the ban and decided to allow slaveholding, it was too late. Some families moved back, but many remained. Charleston decisively eclipsed Savannah as the center for Southern Jewish settlement. By 1800, South Carolina, which at that point possessed little life beyond Charleston and its environs, held the largest Jewish population of any state. Estimates put some 500 Jewish people in Charleston at that time, when there were probably only 400 in New York and perhaps 2,500 in the newly established United States. Charleston remained the unofficial capital of North American Jewry until about 1830. Charleston is also home to Sullivan's Island. It's estimated that 40% of the estimated 400,000 enslaved Africans transported to colonial America arrived at Sullivan's Island. If accurate, that made it the largest slave port in North America. Adding further insult to injury, it's worth noting that Judah Philip Benjamin, the individual suspected of orchestrating the Lincoln assassination, holds the distinction of being the first Jewish American to serve on an executive cabinet in American history. Scholars have dubbed him the brains of the Confederacy for his pivotal role as Jefferson Davis's right-hand man, having served as Attorney General, Secretary of War, and Secretary of State for the Confederacy. Despite being the South's most prominent Jew, Benjamin managed to evade justice by fleeing to London, where he embarked on a successful career as a high-powered lawyer. The U.S. government covertly attempted to extradite him back to face trial. This is merely scratching the surface of what appears to be a concerted effort to deflect blame and unfairly implicate not only an innocent party, but also an ally. Therefore, forgive me if I find offense in the prevailing trend of unjustly attributing blame to the German ethnic population for the transgressions of other groups within the white narrative. It's untenable to selectively claim whiteness for personal gain while sidestepping accountability. A nuanced approach is necessary in educating the public about such weighty matters, ensuring that distinctions are made and responsibility is properly assigned.